Elon Musk's doggy program is missing a lot of potential fraud out there, a lot of waste, a lot of abuse, because it's focused on pushing the idea that there's waste, fraud, and abuse that doesn't actually exist. Because it's not really about finding that. It's about justifying the drastic actions they're going to take, which include massively cutting Social Security. And I want to describe sort of how this con has played out. So they've claimed that 40% of phone calls that go into Social Security centers were fraudulent. Elon Musk kept saying that. I don't know if he got it on 4chan or on Twitter or whatever, but he keeps saying that. Yeah, it turns out that's not the case. So they did these new anti-fraud checks on all of the claims, and only 2 claims out of over 110,000 were fraudulent, which means the fraudulent rate is not 40%. It's a little bit lower. It's 0.0018%. And thankfully, we discovered that. Now, we needed to do this search. We couldn't have just understood on a visceral level that a fraudulent rate of 40% was obviously wrong. So they did this extra series of checks, which significantly impacted the speed at which they could process all of these claims and requests for help. So people's access to Social Security was negatively affected so that we could fact check what a Dumbo was spreading as an insane conspiracy theory, because the idea is supposed to be, and it will be coming out of this. How many people are going to see this eventual fraudulent number? You think Elon Musk is going to be like tweeting it out like, oh no, it turns out actually the call centers are doing great. They're fine, there's not a lot of fraud. No, but they saw his constant coverage. They saw his interviews on Fox News. They see the headlines, all of that. Social Security, 40% fraud. And so when it comes next that the Republicans are talking about either cutting the benefits, pushing back the retirement rate, making the bureaucracy more difficult to comply with, then a lot of people will go into that conversation believing things that are not true about Social Security as a result of the willful dishonesty of people like Elon Musk. And the problems with Social Security go beyond just temporary things like this extra fraud check or whatever. Remember, they fired a ton of people, and now they're having trouble actually doing the work they need to do, which is what happens when you fire thousands and thousands of people doing vital work. So they're telling the remaining employees, you have to work 10% harder. Okay. I get he's the amazing boss. He's the great manager I keep hearing. Just tell them they have to work harder. And I'm sure all of them, those government bureaucrats who have been being smeared on a daily basis by Elon Musk and Doggy, will be happy to comply and work harder for no additional pay to make up for his drastic firing. So this entire thing, Brett, is just such an utter debacle. And I worry that long term, it's going to hurt actual, honest, serious efforts to find wasteful spending, that sort of thing. What do you make of all this?
Right, it's just miraculous to me that the solution they always seem to find is like the problems that are inefficient in, Musk's efficiency police, Reichstag or whatever, is I don't know what Reichstag is. I just want to say something German. But the thing that he always seems to find is like the companies or the policies that are government run that help people are inefficient, but there is no inefficiency whatsoever in the way that the government props up private business. That's it. Like I recently watched like a thought talk with a guy I know who works for Elon, and he said like Elon actually does come in and say like, all right, let's get all the groups together. Everyone who sees a problem with what we're doing, speak up. We'll all get everybody together. It doesn't matter who you are. You can escalate it immediately and we can work to a quick conclusion. But that's like within a singular project, within something that Elon had to know enough about to pitch the company or at least take it over and run it for a while. But when you show up with no knowledge whatsoever, not only about how the system works, like day to day, but like what an investment in a position within that program does to actually save money down the line, you get stuff like this, where he gets to write headlines like, listen, if everybody works 10% harder, we can save 150% of this budget. Well, it's like, no, when you do that, you're increasing the likelihood that something will slip through the cracks, and there's no one there to check it. And it's crazy that they end up being even more efficient because these watchdog groups, these auditing groups groups that DOGE is supposed to be are redundant themselves. Rather than going to the auditors and saying, what did you find? He's like, oh, all that work we invested in for a reason? We will explicitly flush that investment down the toilet, say we don't trust it, and spend this much money on me and my roll boys going and finding things out about systems we have no clue about from scratch.
Yeah.
Did I freeze?
And then when we find out that we actually needed a bunch of the stuff that we just flushed down the toilet, we'll spend an incredible amount of money in an incredibly inefficient process to bring that back and try to convince people to return to jobs that not only were they fired from, but they were insulted nonstop along the way. Mocked for having lost their jobs, told to work harder by a guy who doesn't show up to work at any of the many companies that he supposedly runs as he's doing all of the doggy stuff. So the entire thing is just grotesque. Look, it is one thing to be like a disruptor as a manager, but like when the end result of that is this entire thing is a daily catastrophe, it doesn't seem like you should have been disrupting. It seems like somebody with actual expertise, as Brett sets out. It's not like there's not people that are already looking for waste. Again, Elon Musk is so utterly ignorant of how everything works that he comes in and just tries to invent a thing that was already functioning.